For this video, we're going to talk about, with hypothesis testing, what happens when things go wrong. We have error, right? If your sample, let's say you take a sample and your sample's far enough away that you say, hey, I'm going to reject the null hypothesis. But as we know, samples can be off, right? There's a chance that you just pick all the wrong ones for your sample. So that could happen, all right? Or the null hypothesis is not true, but our sample was close enough to the non-truth that we should have rejected it and we didn't. So we're going to look at those two types of things. So I made a little chart here. This is my error chart. So along the top I have the null hypothesis. It's either true or it's false. And then along the column here I reject or I do not reject, right? Those are our conclusions and this is the truth, true or false, and that's what I did for my conclusions, all right? So when I have a true null hypothesis but I reject it, that's called a type 1 error. If I have a true null hypothesis and I don't reject it, that's a good thing, right? So that's okay. If my null hypothesis is not correct, it's false, and I reject it, that's good. And then lastly, if I have a false null hypothesis and I do not reject it, that's bad. I should have rejected it, and I didn't. That's a type 2 error. So in real life, all right, we've got different ways we can think about this, and you'll see some problems in your book that you should practice with this. I have two examples. So let's do it with court, all right? Court and real life or movies, all right? So here we go. So if you've seen The Shawshank Redemption or you know about O.J. Simpson, those are our two examples here, all right, from what we know. So when you're in court, a trial, you are innocent, right? That's the null hypothesis for any trial, right? The null hypothesis is you are innocent. And they try to prove that you're not innocent, right? Which is guilty, right? So let's see here. So what kind of scenario do we have this? So we have a null hypothesis was true, but they rejected it. In other words, the jury said this person was guilty when in fact they were innocent. So if you've ever seen The Shawshank Redemption, that would be the star of the movie, Andy Dufresne, right? He didn't kill his wife, but they put him in prison. They said he was guilty. So Andy Dufresne from The Shawshank Redemption is a type 1 error. In other words, here it is. The null hypothesis is true. We have this is numerically, not theoretically. And the jury came to a conclusion over here, right? The conclusion should have been here. That was the truth. Should have been on this side, but it was over here. So in other words, they rejected this and they shouldn't have, okay? They ended up over here. They should have ended up over there. All right, that one's a little bit easier. So the probability of making a type 1 error is the size of alpha. If it's 1%, you get a 1% chance of making an error. If it's 5%, you get a 5% chance of making an error. That's a type 1 error. Type 2 error, notice I've got two normal distributions. Get it? Type 2, two distributions. Has nothing to do with each other, but I like to say type 1, make one hump. Type 2, make two. All right, so here we have for my type 2. So I have this in black over here. I don't know if you can see that. This one's in blue over here. So here's my null hypothesis. It's not true. The truth is actually way over here, and this is the truth distribution way over here. And I have my alpha marked off. Alpha is part of what we thought was true, the hypothesized distribution. So here's my alpha, all right? So normally, if I ended up over here and I rejected it, anything on this side would be fine, right? Anything over there would be fine. So, rejecting the null hypothesis would be great. But if you end up on this side, that means you've made a mistake, right? You said, hey, the null hypothesis is true, and we know it's false because this is the truth distribution. It's farther away, all right? We've always thought this was the truth. This actually is, all right? So if I make a line where alpha was right here, and this distribution is what we're dealing with, okay? So now let's just look at this one. Anything on this side is a type 2 error. We call that beta. Anything on that side is called power. Power is the probability of rejecting a false null hypothesis, all right? So an example of this would be the following. So in court, remember that you are presumed innocent. That's our null hypothesis. But the truth is over here. The jury failed to reject this null hypothesis. So if you remember from back in the early 90s, 1994, very much O.J. Simpson trial, from what we believe, is that he was guilty, but they let him go. So innocent right here? No, right? But the jury ended up over here. They should have been on this side where the truth was, all right? So that happens a lot in court, right? So we have some people that go to jail and they shouldn't. We have some people that are set free and they shouldn't, right? So people that are wrongfully accused or wrongfully convicted are type 1 errors. People that go free are type 2 errors, all right? Make sense? We will do some examples later on.